on February 25th, 2015. This image was posted to the social media platform Tumblr with the caption, "Guys, please help me. Is this dress white and gold or blue and black?" Early the next day, the digital media company BuzzFeed reposted the photo. And by the next morning, the dress had gone from obscurity to international phenomenon. Within less than 48 hours, this photograph became what Terrence McCoy of the Washington Post dubbed the drama that divided a planet. In the words of Mark Wilkie of BuzzFeed, instead of rising and falling like a wave, like most viral content does, this was like a vertical wall. BuzzFeed's 8 posts about the dress had a combined 41 million views in less than 24 hours. That is a really big deal for any piece of viral content. And one of the reasons that this went viral so quickly is in a very real way and a very tangible way. The dress challenges our conceptions of reality. Many of you are looking at an image of a blue and black dress, but most of the rest of you would swear that it's a white and gold dress. Research suggests that women and older individuals are slightly more likely to see white and gold, while other research suggests that the more time you spend in artificial versus natural light may impact the colors that you see. Regardless of what colors you're seeing right now, you may be thinking to yourself, or at least have thought in the past, that the other people who say they see different colors must be totally out of their minds. Or maybe they're even lying to you about what they're seeing. Or as one of my friends recently retorted when I showed her the image and said I saw blue and black, "Are you colorblind?" Many people have seen it both ways, but I have only ever seen the dress as blue and black. And my wife and many other people I know have only ever seen it as white and gold. I mean, come on. One of us has to be lying about what we're seeing, right? How can two seemingly rational people be looking at the exact same image, in the exact same room, with the exact same lighting, on the exact same screen, and one of us swears it's blue and black, while the other swears it's white and gold? It can feel pretty impossible to comprehend. Now, we generally have a difficulty accepting that somebody else could see the world so fundamentally different than we do. Somebody's got to be lying, right? Wouldn't we actually prefer it if somebody was lying to us, rather than having to accept the fact that we see this image so differently? Now, for those of you who see white and gold, I'm going to have to burst your bubble a bit. It maybe even will feel like I'm trying to break your brain. Or you may just decide I'm lying to you outright. The actual dress in this image is and always was blue and black. This is Cecilia, who took the photo and then was wearing the dress for her daughter's wedding. Now, those of you in the blue and black camp may be feeling vindicated right now, and those of you in the white and gold camp might be frustrated, confused, or maybe even upset. But there are 2 important facts that I hope will help. 1, the actual image here is a really imperfect representation of the dress in the real world. And 2, the colors in this photograph on this dress are neither blue and black nor white and gold, but actually something in between. Now, at this point, you may be wondering why it is that we see the dress so differently. So perhaps a Cliff Notes version of the psychology of perception related to the dress would be helpful. As you may have seen on PBS's Nova this spring, one commonly accepted explanation for why the dress is seen so differently is that this image is visually ambiguous. That means that we can't easily tell whether it is a white and gold dress in too much shadow or a blue and black dress bathed out in too much light. Now, even though the second option is the reality of this image, it's ambiguous enough that our brains can't easily decide which one it is. Now, this is where it gets a bit tricky, because our subconscious mind accesses our prior lived experiences and makes a decision about whether it's in too much shadow or too much light without actually informing or consulting our conscious minds. And when we subconsciously think that it's in too much shadow, our brain will automatically filter out the bluish hues, and we'll see the dress as white and gold. When we subconsciously think it's in too much light, our brain will automatically filter out the yellowish hues, and we'll see the image as blue and black. As this image up here demonstrates, by taking away the visual ambiguity, the black portion of the dress on the left, covered in the yellowish rectangle, is the exact same color as the gold portion of the dress on the right, covered in the bluish rectangle. The same is true for the white and blue colors. It is the context of the dress that we're looking at, and those original colors, that changes our perception of those colors. Now, to put it simply, our brains have what I like to call an automatic autocorrect system. This is more oftenly called automatic information processing. And these autocorrections literally shape all the aspects of our lives and the way that we see the world. Now, this is kind of crazy because our subconscious mind filters every piece of sensory input that comes into our brain and only tells our conscious mind about the stuff that it feels is relevant. And when we encounter something that's ambiguous or seems like it should be a certain way, our subconscious mind autocorrects that information to fit our preconceived subconscious notions about how the world should be. Now, just like our phones or our word processors, most of the time, these autocorrections make our lives so much easier. But just like our technology, sometimes our brain gets it terribly wrong. The really crazy thing here, though, is that even when we can logically understand that the dress really is blue and black, and that it really is washed out in too much light, our conscious minds can't typically change our subconscious perceptions in this case, so we'll still see the dress the same way we've always seen it, right or wrong. As you'd learn in any general psychology course, the same thing can happen with many optical illusions. Even when the illusion has been revealed to you, you probably still see the illusion. As Steve Stewart Williams, a psychology professor, put it, perceptual illusions show us in a clear and unambiguous way that we don't directly experience the world. Perceptual experience is a simulation, a mental model that doesn't always correspond with the reality it aims to depict. Perception is largely involuntary and goes beyond the evidence of the senses. For example, in this checker shadow illusion, tiles A and B are the exact same color. So why do they look different colors? And why does tile B look so much lighter than tile A? Now, unlike the dress, this image has some unambiguous visual cues that are actually designed to trick our brains. For example, tile B is situated on the board where a white tile should be, and it's also clearly in the shadow of the green cylinder. In order for it to look that light, in shadow, it would have to be lighter than it actually is. And so our brains autocorrect it to make it look lighter. Similarly, for tile A to look that dark in brighter light, it would have to be darker than it is. So our brains autocorrect that too. Now, as Steve Stewart Williams additionally said, we don't directly perceive the colors of objects in the world. Instead, the perceptual system makes an educated guess based on the object's surroundings. And so it's only when you can take away the external things that you can see that these two are exactly the same color. But as soon as it all comes back together, they look different colors again. That's pretty crazy. Now, there are hundreds of other optical illusions that I could show you that basically short-circuit our visual perception. The same thing can happen with feelings, thoughts, or even sounds. But these perceptual illusions and understanding them is not my big idea today. You may be wondering why I've taken the time to show you this optical illusion, explain it to you, especially related to an image of a dress that is nearly a decade old. What makes this worthy of talking about now? First, I've shown you significant evidence of our brain's subconscious autocorrect system that quite literally makes us perceive the world in ways that are entirely inconsistent with reality. Now, thankfully, most people misperceive optical illusions in much the same way. But this image of the dress poses a bigger challenge. Because if we can see this image so fundamentally differently and can't really use logic or reason to help us see it a different way, or help others to see it the way we see it, are there perhaps other aspects of our lives that we similarly perceive fundamentally differently? Is it possible that a person who is otherwise educated and sane could see the world so differently when it comes to something way more important? I bet you didn't think I was going to go there. In the 2020 US presidential election, approximately 47% of voters thought that Donald Trump deserved a second term, and 51% of voters thought that Joe Biden would be a better president. Now, granted, I've heard many people say that they wish they'd had better choices, but there were others who metaphorically jumped into the deep end in support of either candidate. Interestingly, whether people voted for Trump or Biden, many of them could not comprehend how someone could have possibly voted for the other guy in good conscience. As evidenced by countless social media posts, these individuals went to the polls and thought their candidate was the only real choice, and the other guy would essentially flush the nation down the toilet. In fact, in one exit poll, 1/3 of polled voters said that their vote was more a vote against either Trump or Biden than it was for either one of them. Now, it's important to recognize that this political divide in the United States is not new. In 6 of the last 8 presidential elections, there's been less than a 5% difference in the popular vote. And in 2 of those elections, the person who won the popular vote didn't win the presidency. It has been nearly 40 years since a president has won the election by more than 10 percentage points, when Ronald Reagan defeated Walter Mondale in 1984. Now, I do not invoke the political divide to be divisive, but rather to show a much more impactful and much more relevant parallel to the dress in our collective but personal perspectives of the world around us. And if social media filter bubbles, estranged family and friends, and the commonly accepted dictate to avoid talking politics at Thanksgiving dinner are any indication, people tend to see the dress in much way the same way they see politics, so fundamentally differently that it can challenge our conceptions of reality. And that can cause some pretty big problems. Think of any current hot-button topic for you which you have a strong opinion. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict, abortion, gun control, immigration, Black Lives Matter, COVID-19 vaccines. I could go on and on and on. Have you ever thought to yourself something along the lines of, this is so clear to me. How could anybody in their right mind possibly see it any differently? Wouldn't we actually prefer that somebody was lying to us rather than having to accept the fact that they see an issue that we see so clearly, so differently? To make things worse, even if we use considerable facts and logic and reasoning to support our point of view, they may never see things from our perspective, no matter how hard we try to convince them or how hard they try to see things from our point of view. And their efforts to change our minds might be similarly fruitless. So we often find ourselves at a stalemate, fueled by our competing egos. As an educator and a psychological scientist, I cringe at the thought that we may just eventually conclude that everybody's answer is right, regardless of facts or evidence. But you may have heard that there are 3 sides to every story: my side, your side, and the truth. With this adage in mind, I want to make it abundantly clear that I am absolutely not arguing for a moral or material relativism, and I'm certainly not saying you should just find or create or fabricate your own alternative facts to support your point of view. To be clear, the actual dress in this image is and always was blue and black, and the image colors are and always will be something in between blue and black and white and gold. Just because you see the world in a certain way doesn't mean you're necessarily right or wrong. And just because somebody else sees it differently doesn't mean they're necessarily right or wrong. We've got to use critical thinking in all aspects of our lives. And we need to make sure that we have sufficient evidence and reasoning to support any claims we make. Even then, we have to recognize that we may not be seeing the whole picture, or that we may be legitimately perceiving something that really isn't there. So how can an understanding of how we can view the dress, or politics, or anything else for that matter, so fundamentally differently, help us to get along better and improve our relationships? First, if we can learn to accept the legitimacy of somebody else's perspective, that can help us to humanize them. In a society that has embraced hate, division, and conflict, especially online, if we can see that somebody else and accept that somebody else sees the world differently, that can help us to metaphorically come to the table and to get along better and get to know them. Maybe we can even try to see things from their perspective. The key word here is try. In the words of New York Times bestselling author on cultivating happiness, Arthur C. Brooks, we don't need to disagree less. We need to disagree better. He also said, even though it may challenge our instincts to find comfort in the familiar, having friends who think differently than us is incredibly valuable. Like I said before, I've never seen the dress as white and gold, and my wife and other people I know have never seen it as blue and black. And even though I may never see it as white and gold, that hasn't stopped me from taking the time to find out how people really can see it that way. And I unequivocally believe that people do see it that way, and that's helped diffuse any conflict that image has the chance to cause in our relationships. Let's try the same with our family, friends, colleagues. Even though you may never see things from another person's perspective, let's take a breath, step back, put our egos in check, try to accept that they really do see it that way, and meet them where they are. Hopefully, they'll do the same for us.